Okay, it's 7:06 now that this party started. We have Miss Victoria, freshman, but I would just direct the board, why don't you take a peek at, I'm gonna pass around, you see that the first, after, item number 3 is the approval of the letter. So why don't I just start, Hannah, with you, and you can take a peek at this. We'll go through the rest of our business, because we'll get to that on item 3. Okay, the camera's on. So Tammy, let's call this meeting to order at 7:07. That seems auspicious. 7:07. Call to order. 7:07. Applicant present. We can start with, it doesn't have to go around, I guess. Jessica Giles here. Who else is here on the planning board? Are you here?
Oh, name myself?
Yes, please.
Okay, John.
Controller Romano.
Excellent. Hannah Carver. Hannah Carver. Also with us is Tammy Morris, our clerk, and the applicant for 46 South Street, members of the public, and also our peacekeeper is here. Thank you. Okay, so that's the call to order. Now we have minutes. Does everyone have the minutes from the past meeting in front of them for approval? We are talking about the May 23rd meeting. Okay, so let's look. Jack Katz, you made it to the minutes. As making public, you made it to last meeting's minutes. Jack Katz made public comment. Thank you.
Anything good?
It just says public comment, Jack Katz. I wrote it down. Lots of it was good. It directed me to a very important point that we're going to discuss later on. So yes, I thought so. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to move that we approve this, unless oh yeah, that's the back, okay.
Second.
Active table back
Okay, great. All in favor?
here. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, minutes approved.
Are you abstaining?
Thank you for noting the abstention. Thanks for having me, clerk. Okay, and so that brings us to the next item, which I just started, which has made its way around. Victoria mentioned, I think at a meeting you were at, because it was a meeting before where we said we should address the tree committee in proper thanks and recognition so they can frame it and show their grandchildren and their next children about the good work. And so you penned a letter, and it's there in front of us. Did it make it around? It's right here. So I think what we should do is just sign it. There's space been made
Right.
for all of us to put our
Right.
names. And so that's great. So I'll say for the record and people listening, and then jump in. Why don't you address it? Do you want to address what the tree committee did? I know we said it once, but let's say it again.
At the initiation of Peggy Hayne through Rotary, she applied for some money to dress up the frontage along Main Street of the fairgrounds. And so this past spring, we purchased about 25 flowering trees and planted them.
And actually, how are those funds raised? From Rotary?
And mostly Rotary, but the village also kicked in some money, and the town did as well.
And the town did.
Yes. And that was so-called phase 1. And actually, we're starting to have some meetings for a phase 2, which is further down toward Kinney.
Okay.
And hope to do some more clearing. I don't know if any of you have paid too much attention to the condition of the side there, but it's all overgrown and pretty much a mess.
Oh, yeah, right near where the fence ends,
Yeah.
right?
It's
Yeah.
rough
It's
back
cracking.
Right.
and brackish and, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of volunteers have grown in there, and it's the loss of the poplar trees has left a big gap. So it's time to address that. The difficulty, well, I'm having a little difficulty with it because everybody on the committee likes flowering trees, but I like big trees. And
That's a good spot for big trees because lack of power line, right?
well, that's a factor, but that can be dealt with.
But there isn't in that Kinney spot? Or am I misremembering?
Say
In
again?
the spot near Kinney, power lines aren't an issue.
Right. It's
So it's
inside the
some,
fence there.
Some canopy roof.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much for what
Thank
you're
you.
doing, really.
Yeah, plant something thirsty.
It's true, yeah.
So there's that letter, so, I think
Thank you.
as long as we just kind of write and write, so if you wanted us to make public
Sign it.
record of all that, and then you can mail it to, okay, to the chair of that committee. Will you mail it to?
Oh, you let me. Okay.
I'll mail it to each
I
one.
get
Lovely,
you.
that's great, perfect, okay, good. Let's say their names out loud. So it's Peggy Haynes was the main orchestrator. Karen Powers was the community organizer. John Alberg was the landscape architect. And Dave Allen, also landscape architect. So here we sign. Okay, great. Thank you. And now,
Colors.
ooh, only 2 minutes behind that. So next on the agenda is a working discussion or working session. So just named because there's recognition that we don't have any new materials from the applicant, but just to tidy up some bits and give you an opportunity.
All right, well, thank you. Good to be back. For the record, my name is Adam Walters, attorney Philip Sutter, representing the applicant. So really, I think we wanted to come back in for clarity. I think we have been operating under some impressions about final materials that are necessary to get to decision. And I think we were wrong. So we were surprised to learn we were wrong, because we had been operating under these assumptions for some time. And we talked over the last year or so about phase 1, phase 2, how that's going to play out. Most of the project, right, is going to be done as phase 1. All the grading, all the stormwater infrastructure, all the roadways, all the improvements go in phase 1. But then those market rate houses will come along later. So we were always under the impression we would deal with the details of those later. We just kind of marked out on a map where they would go, where the lots are, and put some stuff in. But then through MRB, we got some comments suggesting, no, we want more details. We kind of emailed back, and there was some back and forth, and then we got a guy email, and love guy emails, but they have a lot of stuff in them.
They're dense.
Yes. So we thought, let's not guess.
Right.
Because we're gearing up for our next phase submittal, and we hope it's our last submittal
Okay.
before final approval. So in that, we had a lot of back and forth internally, and we didn't know. We couldn't come to a yes, this is what we need to do. So if I may,
Yeah.
what I did is I took Guy's very dense email and tried to make it into a list. And we just kind of want to run through that list, have a discussion, make sure we're on the same page in terms of what we're doing. Claudia has been working very, very hard on designs to show you some things and give you some ideas.
Great.
And we'll be asking whether we're there or you need more or just clarifying.
Just one quick question.
Yeah, please.
So is this list that you're going to give us, is this something that has been developed internally by you all, the applicant, and your group, or is it in conversations with Guy and
No,
MRB as well?
This was a Guy email.
No, I understand that, but...
I just pulled it out this morning.
Okay, so you haven't had discussions with him about it?
Now, we thought this is best for.
So largely at the end of last meeting, it was sort of recognized that certain facets of the plan were not ready for delivery for today, which then led to, oh, well then we're thinking that there's not enough to be delivered in a final, and so the guy addressed that, and then I guess I'm hearing that your list.
And MRB apparently too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so-
I didn't see any input.
But before we get the long list, well, after we show what we have, the list should get very short.
Okay, great.
Claudia was really open to it,
Yeah.
but.
So and one of the primary things, for example, being the South Street water mitigation had not been addressed yet. So, and as I stated at last meeting, how can we possibly, with that being such an important issue and all of that, go forward? If that were the one thing, maybe, but there were some other details that were missing that MRB wanted answers to and all that. So this meeting was intended to talk about the design specifically, so that that is something that we could get clear on and get at least in a close approximation of what that would look like, instead of an unfortunate situation where every single house became a site plan review beyond the community building or the nursery school. No, beyond the community building,
Around the community.
because that would be
Yeah.
just
So,
difficult.
and to be clear, there's daily back and forth between MRB and the engineers. So they're all talking engineer, and everybody's clear, I think, on what needs to be done from an engineering perspective to respond to the MRB comments. It's really the architecture and planning component that was kind of a wrinkle for us.
Okay.
So that's really why we want to focus on design issues. So with that, I'm going to ask Claudia to show you some of the things she's been working on feverishly for the last 2 weeks.
Okay, so we'll just start with the nursery school, which had just a very small update as I developed the plan more, and I'll pass these around, and I'll pass them to the audience too, because they're not really large enough to see, but as you know, this hasn't changed significantly at all from the first look you had of it. The relationship of the windows in the spline to the interior spaces got adjusted.
And just because everyone is so keen on timeline and change, so this hasn't changed significantly from the last time we saw
Correct.
the barn shape.
Right, no, the barn
This
shape,
to
everything
fit
about
more.
the
Right,
building is the same, but I'm pointing
anticipating
out
someone
a
saying,
little bit of minor changes.
About 2 months ago.
The one change that we worked on that affected impervious surface is we added a covered patio on the rear of the building.
okay,
And we then swapped out, Ryan was able to swap out some unnecessary sidewalk to allow this to not affect the stormwater caps.
okay,
The other thing that was calculated in that he was also able to swap out, there was a bunch of extra pavement and concrete in the parking area. Was an 80 square foot little shed that they want in the play area to keep their little bicycles and various swings and stuff. So
okay.
that is also
So that's going, so there's going to be a shed.
a little shed that will
Installed
probably
on
have the
concrete.
same shape as this little building, so it should be very cute.
Okay.
80 square feet, 8 by 10. So
Okay,
you'll notice that there's one extra window. Again, this is really getting into minor detail, but there's one extra window in the front of the building that we added.
Okay.
Just when we got into the layout. And we took out the high window in the rear of the building and substituted a barn door because it was a window to nowhere, based on the internals plan.
so none of the entrance exits changed
Nothing
drastically,
has
so you
changed.
have a covered
We had
area.
to- One of the
which is
things
great.
that we had to adjust was the entrance from the spur of Crescent Way, you might call it, to the north.
Okay,
Has become the desirable access for the fire entrance, so I had to swap internal spaces around to allow the sprinkler and water service to come in there,
okay,
which had previously been coming in through the parking lot. So we did have a discussion with the fire chief about where they would want to stage, should they ever need to, and they decided that side was better than the parking lot side because their kids and parents would be coming out of the building should there ever be a true emergency there.
okay,
And so they wanted to stage on the other side of the building, and so therefore that's where we need the fire department connection, the
Okay.
sprinklers and all of that internal
infrastructure.
we need a big closet basically to
Okay.
house that. And the water will come in there, yeah.
What is the color of the roof as dark as it would indicate?
It's a metal roof, standing seam.
Standing seam metal roof.
Yes.
So it'll have extremely rapid runoff.
It's gonna have gutters, it'll have gutters.
Good sized ones.
Yes,
You know, there's
oversized
always a spillover effect.
Oversized gutters, yes.
And the building material for the walls, the
The
exterior walls.
exterior wall is a hardy board, board and batten. it's a cement product, you know,
Oh,
yeah.
more textured.
Yeah,
They give you the battens, you
Okay.
get the hardy colors.
And you paint the battens, what works with it?
You either get the pre-finished material, in which case it would be, I mean, we kind of like the red, the closest red.
Oh, so there's several choices.
The closest red that Hardy has is this kind of redwood. So that's the most likely color for it. And it's all cement board and metal roof. And those are the only changes to the
Same
nursery.
color as the boards, is that?
Yes, typical, yeah. Yeah, I'd be scared to do anything.
so I've not actually constructed with hardy board. Do you end up, is that it? Is it done once it's colored? You don't paint it or stain it again, it's done? It's in
You
the
can
material?
do it either way, but usually the best way is to get it factory primed and painted.
And
And then it has
it's
a long
Lasts
warranty.
long.
much longer, yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
But it's not like that on the inside, so eventually.
it's not that on the inside,
Yeah.
okay. Just curious, thank you.
Okay, on the,
That's-
any other questions on the nursery
That's
school?
nursery school. That design we were always anticipating presenting, so.
So again, part of this is, we recognize that there might not be absolute 100% finals, but to have a similar thing so that if site plan happens again in the future, you can come back and say,
here's what-
Of
this
course,
is not in
Of
keeping.
course.
Like
Right.
suddenly, you know, Frank Lloyd Wright is beautiful but completely odd from what's happening here.
of course,
That's our intention. Okay, thank you.
of course. So one of the other parts of the project that hadn't been fully designed were, and so there is Ithaca Neighborhood Housing Services multiple family building that's been designed. Then there is rental townhouses at the neighborhood design.
Right.
Then there are for sale townhouses. Those are supposed to come later in phase 2, but we wanted, based on the comments from MRB, I now have the 3-unit. There are two 3-unit buildings that sit looking at each other
Okay,
on lot 2.
okay.
And there's one 4-unit building that sits across the street next to the bigger multifamily building.
Right,
And
okay.
that's called lot 8.
Yep.
So I have both of those done now. And again, I apologize for the small,
Do you have a plan, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt, but do you have a plan that shows the reduction of what you said, I think, concrete and asphalt?
Brian would have that. Brian
Yeah,
would
so
have that.
that will be
Yes.
the next.
Yes.
That will be the
absolutely.
next section.
And
Yeah,
yes, to the shed.
After the last meeting, which was, I believe, I don't recall if it was May or April, but after we talked about that covered patio, it was the same time that he redid the parking lot, and then we had a perfect swap.
But one of MRB's many comments was they pointed out they thought there was excessive sidewalk over by the nursery schools.
Yeah,
But as we've done before, every one of their comments, when we submit, we'll have a memo that has a clear response.
So the 3-unit buildings looks like this.
These are again on lot 2.
Correct.
which, can you tell me which, what are you referring to? I can't remember where my great map is. What are you looking at?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's,
What April, what
yeah, it's
date?
8, oh yeah, February.
February.
19 submission, tab 8.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Okay. Sorry, okay, well, I'm not sorry, it's a working session, here it goes.
Lot 2.
Lot 2, yeah. Okay,
So these are for sale townhouses. They have a combination, I think we talked about this once before, we have a combination of inset porches on these that go, the porches go the full length of the buildings. And then the middle building is set back a little bit, so its porch is actually set in to provide a little privacy. see the back.
Okay.
They also have patios in the rear, small patios in the rear, as well as attached storage sheds.
Also, Miss Hannah didn't get to see, they brought in, last meeting, aluminum railing that's powder coated, which is a paint, but like, well, how do you powder coat a bike or something like that? As the material instead
Oh,
of.
you just want to
Yeah.
So Claudia, I'm trying to get oriented here with how these are here. So this side is facing Crescent Way, or is it facing each other?
They face each other,
So
so
these
one of
portions
the
look across at each other?
Correct.
Okay.
That's the one part of the plan that doesn't relate to the street.
Gotcha.
In the same
And the
way.
patios are back.
Correct,
Okay, so this is back, this is front.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
correct.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
So this represents the rear of the for sale townhouses. So they do have small storage spots for bicycles, barbecues, whatever kinds of stuff we all manage to collect outside of our houses. So that's the 3-unit.
What's it look like from the street?
So on the street, you're going to see the end of the building and the other end of the building. So we will not see the same.
And it
We
looks
have
like-
a gable end and then we have an eve end, and we intentionally will swap them so that it will be two different
Okay.
ends.
So those are like 4-window
Yeah,
windows on that end? Yeah, okay.
yeah. Shingle, there's shingle up above and a little different color differentiation on these.
And are those real shingles?
It'll be a hardy board, shingled board product. All of the siding
So
is
it's not a real wood product?
It is not.
Are you a little worried about or maybe this of course utterly changeable, is the darkness of the colors on this with climate change and the heat that we get some days? The colors are rather deep, sort of sun attracting,
Right.
generating a lot of heat.
Well, I've had interesting discussions about this recently because with the amount of insulation you put on roofs, I was having an interesting discussion with somebody about whether or not black versus gray versus white
Right.
mattered if you have 12
That's
inches of
probably
insulation. Well, actually, the engineer was saying it still did, and I was challenging him, saying, really? So, perhaps we might want to move away from that dark green. I think it's not quite as dark, actually,
This shows it darker than
it shows it, the way that this got printed shows it significantly darker. The hardy colors tend to be darker than like the vinyl colors, but they're not like super
well, they're more,
intense.
they sort of do, they're meant to look like stained wood.
Yeah,
Do you have the green?
yeah.
So I was actually in New York City on Monday, it was the first hot day in New York City, and people were talking about this, and they were saying, this is hanging out with a bunch of architects and art people, and that's what they say, the dark colors absorb heat quickly, but give it away quickly as well. And that's why the Bedouins are wearing black linen and not white. So what's the relationship between them and building
I just-
materials?
Yes.
But she's not
Put in
listening.
installation.
I matter.
Soft gray roof.
We'll ask
But I don't
her,
know.
yeah. No, it's
It might be, it doesn't make it.
It's hard to know, right?
So design material, ladies. In New York City, we were talking about
Yes,
how
sorry.
black absorbs heat quickly, but also gives it away quickly,
Right.
And so that's-
the hot or the cold, right?
right? And the
Can't make up
transfer
its mind.
and
Why?
the movement, which is why in the desert we wear black, we don't wear white. So I'm not sure of color ultimately, if you're proper, what the 6 of them.
Russian string hot tea.
That's the green, but maybe, it wouldn't be heartbreaking to switch to the
moss.
To the moss.
So you were thinking about sage.
I was.
I mean, I think again, as
You're
long
attracted to the
as.
colors in the palette that have the most potency.
And the color life expectancy is what, over 10 years?
No, I think that they give you guarantees for much longer.
Over longer.
Yeah.
But
You can
also-
buy the manufacturer.
I mean, Victoria, these are all colors I see in our village. This And certainly in Larchmont and Tamarack, and darker with the reddish cedar color.
Well, most of the rooms
I don't know what else is
are.
coming back.
The roofs are, the roofs are,
Very particular thing.
I did pick a little bit lighter shingle than is shown in this rendering,
Okay.
which I will include in the material.
Okay.
A much more gray, like a more mottled gray color.
Okay,
This is the 4 unit, which is a variation on the 3
so
unit.
that's lot 8.
Lot 8, yep.
Just a couple of observations. I'm noticing in this drawing, we do have fences in the back.
That's right.
So the people who, if a person is buying an affordable unit, they're buying a single unit in a 3-unit building.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
And they have control of that portion of that building, but the land on which it sits belongs to
Correct.
IHS. What about the landscaping in front? Will people be doing their own landscaping in front, or is?
Well, Ryan has a landscaping plan, so there will be some plantings when they buy the house, when we turn it over, when we sell it, but then after that, it's theirs to do whatever they want. In some of your other for sale projects, people, generally they stick with what they got for a while, and then slowly they, over time, they plant some additional things. So it's, everything. A little bit of it,
So are these
Here's
fences?
another 4 unit if you guys want to take a look at that.
Are the fences a little bit like what you have downtown in Hancock?
Yes, I believe so. Cedar.
I wasn't paying attention, please make it back. To the audience who can see this, the public. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. If they made it back, certainly.
Oh, I just brought
Okay.
some over.
Thank you.
This is the back of the 4 unit building, which is not dissimilar to the 3 unit. So again, the sheds, the small patios.
Can buyers add on to these houses, do construction
Ooh.
or is there?
They would not be able to change the footprint of these houses based on the way that this
Setbacks
whole
are-
site plan has been organized and the impervious surface and et cetera, without coming back to this body to get permission.
Or variance if it were a tiny
Right.
big shed.
Anything you need a building permit for.
Yeah. But again, I mean, my experience from other projects within IHS that were sold is that when and if people outgrow these or are in a situation to go to a bigger they move. And they get sold. So they're the true starter home, so to speak, and not so much something that you can modify.
So those are the affordable for sale.
So those are affordable for sale. There's one 4-unit building and there's 2 3-unit buildings.
And the buying and selling is through INHS.
Yes.
This is great.
They retain the land when people buy the house, but when you buy it, you agree to resell it to affordable. It's a whole complex process.
So it's also the cement siding, the smart trim, the same rail system, possibly not exactly the same model of rail that the rental, but the same materials.
Can you say, I'm sorry if I missed this, what is smart trim?
Smart trim is a wood product that is used for trimming out with furniture. It comes in either textured or smooth. It's an alternate, considered more environmentally sound than PVC plastic trim, which is used in terms of like the
That's
durable
interesting.
trims.
It's also
Yeah.
a division, yeah.
Are you looking at the sheds?
The sheds
That are connected?
yes,
in
Yeah,
the-
I need to make a division between the
This
sheds.
is slightly
Or
awkward looking.
rows are.
Yeah.
You know, a piece of this and a piece of that.
Agree.
So John and I were thinking a boulder division in the middle, because this is kind of a little skimpy, just to.
You mean the stone, when you say boulder?
Uh,
Oh, boulder, B-O-L-D. Certainly,
Strong.
yeah.
Yes.
absolutely, yeah, I
Because
agree,
that looks skimpy
yeah.
and looks weird.
And we may
Color side by
actually,
side.
change the roof configuration a little bit so that they are.
And you know, since we're talking roofs and roofs and roofs, any solar on the school, the
Nursery
first building, yeah, the nursery that you just showed us, or any of these buildings, I'm still asking the question, you know, several months later now, where is our alternate energy going to be coming from? With this many roofing opportunities, with them facing west and south, and now they accept west-facing roofs, I still haven't seen any, you know, evidence of going to alternatives.
Well, I mean, one of the major things that we're doing in this neighborhood that is very different from elsewhere is there's no natural gas in this loop
Good.
at all. So there won't be
Good.
any natural gas appliances. I mean, there won't be any heating with natural gas, there won't be any cooling with natural gas. It's going to be all electric. I suppose if somebody desperately wanted a propane stove, they would be free to get it.
I think at the last meeting, didn't we should say that it's all going to be heat pumps?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
so-
electric such that,
So we did do, and we'll re-summarize again in our next email, but we did a fairly comprehensive presentation on the green features. Everything has been aligned for solar, but at this point there's no money available to.
so do that. So as we know, right, the programs are shifting to be incentives to buy into a solar farm.
I
Which
just
I know
got a
raises
letter
your
in the mail
dander.
today.
I know that raises your dander about where solar farms should be placed, because you're not wrong, but that's where the
Yes,
subsidies
if
are
we
going.
start
and
placing
not-
those, you know, you always have to think, you invent something, and you do it,
But
and
then
the
what will the monkeys
consequences
do?
come a decade later. We've done it. Who thought when the first Ford rolled out, the entire world
Oh,
would be
man.
belted with highways? Nobody.
No.
But that's the way we tend to think.
It's true.
So if it switches, I mean, back, then it's, I mean, you can put solar panels on your roof.
And they'll be looking for opportunities.
But your appliances will be outfitted to deal with electric, and that's the important thing. I think.
Yeah.
It would be my dream to find a client who
Yeah.
wanted to use the new shingles that have solar.
Oh, man.
I wish they
I'm
were more
looking for that
reasonably
person.
priced.
I'm looking for that person.
Well, and you could, right, that
That's
is
a
a
fabulous
good lead
solution.
into the for market
Okay.
discussion.
5 different for sale types of buildings that we're looking at.
Okay.
So they're kind of variations on the theme, but
And this is affordable,
this is
Yeah,
not
this is
affordable.
the market
This
rate
is
for
full
sale.
market value.
Yeah, so what Claudia's done is kind of take what she had in her brain
Yeah,
and put it out there.
right. So
Okay.
here we go. Here is a for sale market rate house, single family house.
okay.
Same palette of materials as all the others in terms of the hardy, the shingles. Maybe somebody will want real shingles. There's a big overhang here. It would be fine to have those shingles. Big porches, single family home. Some of the single family homes might have
Used to it. So this is Sam's garage.
So that would be like.
Sam's garage. Yeah.
Lot 13, lot 14,
Right.
lot 9,
Yes.
lot 10.
Yes.
But they might have a garage on those lots as well. There's a,
Sure.
so they could have a garage, they could have a single garage, this happens to be showing a double garage.
So
So that-
same general design,
Same exact design. And a big garage.
Okay.
which is best.
Yes,
That's not cut out of 4x8 ready-made lattice strips here. It's a little
No.
more customized.
it is custom made,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
So, and Rick was kind to point out what lots we're talking about here, but I just want to reiterate for the public who might be viewing streaming this, or sitting in front of us, that really we're talking about largely the area in the outer circle when you come in and see the neighborhood, looking like this.
It used to be across the street from the main building.
Yeah.
These are on the south part of the lot.
Okay, you might want to have a house with a duplex, with another duplex, with another unit. There are some of the lots that are allowed to have duplexes on them. So this is an example of that same single-family house. No garage shown on this particular plan, but another small, accessible dwelling unit.
And so this would be a duplex.
That would be considered a duplex, 2 dwelling units. Obviously, there's many other ways to do it, but in the interest of showing options for you and how they would fit in.
My brother always went to the house.
Rod's coming next.
This is,
Now, you might want to have a detached garage with your house, okay? Not everybody wants an attached garage, although I can't see why anybody wouldn't want one, but there could be a situation where somebody wanted a detached garage. So that is another building type I wanted to show, but you might have that.
And some of this might be mix and match, right?
Right. Well, it's my intention to put together a pricing plan and a design plan where someone could say, I want the house and I want you to modify this part of it. So it makes sense to have these parts and pieces work together.
It also makes sense then for the approval of those presentations later because it would be in keeping with something that had already been looked at.
Right, exactly. It'll give us a place to start. Here is a small garage with a dwelling unit above it. Okay, so if you want to add it in the back, we have some lots where you're allowed to have 3 dwelling units, where you could conceivably have a duplex in the front and then a garage with a dwelling unit.
So the family of 3 builds a house and then their sister comes to stay, their brother comes to stay, they build.
Right.
A child stays home.
these doors are vinyl?
Probably not.
Probably not. One observation, because you see it all over now, it's being done. A shape that's pushed back in the building, like a window or a door, especially these fairly big that you slide up, right? For instance, our fire station here, the new one, the doors to the fire station are white, and they fly right out of the building. If they were a rich, deep color, they'd go back in the building. That's always, you know, the windows are the eyes of the building, and if you push them back properly, they really look good. And white, usually for a garage door, just flies in your face. Just, you know, I see it from, you see it everywhere.
I like this better, Vicki, so.
Yeah.
I do too.
Right.
Yeah, so that's just what
We'll get something like that.
yeah. So
Not
puts it back nicely.
Yeah.
Makes it
Looks
more
nice.
three-dimensional.
Very nice, isn't it? Yeah.
So that's, just describe what you, that's a single family with an attached garage.
Yep. Let's see, what have I not shown you? I think I've got
I think
5.
that's it.
I think I've got 5. So just as a matter of interest, you know, my effort here has been to use the same materials. I changed some of the architectural details. It costs a little bit more money to build these. They have a little bit bigger overhangs in places. The main house I show has a little wooden feature under the front soffit. Maybe real shingles, maybe wooden garage doors will be chosen by the future owners. And I have several other houses that I think will also fit into, I guess I would call this craftsman for the 21st century. So there's this concept, which is not dissimilar to the concept that you've seen. Again, you know, rather, this would have a raised porch. There are people that would prefer to have a raised porch anywhere else rather than the open porch. So, and finally, this, the one that I showed with the beautiful wooden doors, is the third type of structural design to have as a architectural choice.
Kind of kicks back to arts and crafts.
Definitely, yeah, my favorite style.
One question, one of the drawings, the drawing of the single family with an attached single family that's smaller, the one has an elevated porch, the other has a flush porch. How do you make that decision, and what's, I'm presuming that that's a poured slab for the porch on the left, is that right?
The porch on the left would have to be, I mean, everything is going to be slab on grade here. It's just a matter of whether we build up the site and or not.
But,
So what, that would be then much more handicap accessible.
yeah,
So that whole living on one floor, again, why would one have a duplex or?
but that would be up to the person who's buying the unit
Yes.
as to whether they.
Yes.
So this is the beginning of the conversation, is what I understood you to say, and then things can change or not, but can't change so drastically such that if this were.
My understanding was that what MRB and the planning board wanted was to have a
A
basic
baseline.
understanding of what we would be building and would look and feel to make sure that it was compatible with everything else and would work with, you know, the neighborhood. And that at each single family home, my understanding, and again, we'll have to verify this, is that as long as it didn't cover more than 15% of the lot, and as long as it wasn't drastically different, it would not return to the planning board for approval.
Right, so the codes officer
The
would
code
look at this
officer
and
would have to
say,
make that judgment.
as he does now, anything
Right.
presented to the codes officer
Right.
And
goes
should
with.
there be something that was dramatically different,
Right,
that someone
so
wanted
then
to
someone
do?
wants to build a container, a house out of a series of stacked containers.
People
Which
ask
happens.
Yes.
straw bale house.
Yes,
where-
right,
Then it would come back to the planning board.
right,
Right, and the code enforcement officer would refer it back.
right.
Right.
So under your code, the way it works is you give site plan approval, and it's not called preliminary, but you come in with for your building permit, and it's kind of final site plan approval, and the code enforcement officer verifies that what's been presented is consistent with the plan approval of the board, it's not yes.
Right.
So that's how we would envision that process working, and that makes sense.
Yes, which would then be possible because these drawings exist.
Yes.
Right, so for example, this garage only shows
Yes.
one little window, whereas the other one showed two windows. I would assume that Tom would find that kind of distinction
In
in
keeping,
material.
right.
But
What we'll try to do is on the submittal that we do next week, kind of label some of these things, whether it be right on the drawings or next book, because Guy also asked that we kind of identify, and we've been talking a lot about material and composition, key features. So we'll explain the hardy board, we'll explain the color palette choices, and it'll probably be this or equivalent,
Right.
something along those lines. So that way, if Hardy goes out of business in 10 years, we can't do it, there's or equivalent. And then it would be code enforcement officer review when he's doing the building permit.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So, anything that,
well, I do have a question about right now on the site plan, you see
a box?
placeholders on all of the market rate houses. So I just want to be clear that
So-
that's acceptable to the planning board, and that the understanding is that the designs will not cover more than 15%.
That someone might
Everything.
choose to locate or orient slightly differently.
Well,
than
if they
what's
did it
shown.
different enough that
As long as
Tom
it doesn't-
decided it needed to come back to you.
Right.
You would send it back.
Right.
But the concept is, we're not going to randomly take the building and just say, well, this lot is this lot is this lot is this, because it is designed to be somewhat flexible. But there'll be a box, and when final plans are done, that house is either in the box or close to the box, and then code enforcement is gonna look at it.
Well, it has to fit within the
The setback.
setbacks.
and it should
But-
be, and my opinion is that it should be at the line of all the other houses on the street.
That-
So if someone wants to
Which
set
is
their
reduce
house
that.
back 75 feet, and everyone else is 25 feet,
That would be.
Then we would need to come back
The
and
street
talk.
weight. Right.
Right, which makes sense.
but if they wanted to put their garage in the rear, toward the rear, and have a driveway to it, with the second dwelling unit, say, that would be acceptable, because they would have their first house in
So
front,
the
for example.
big question is, does that work? Or should we be doing something different? As the representation on those single-family lots.
No, but now actually, and now I'm not wishing Tom was here, I'm glad he's having time with his life. But, our code only requires a minimum setback and does not require a maximum. There's not. So somebody actually could come to you and say, I want to build way back from everyone else. And right now, that's not something that this village can mandate.
Except we
You can
have,
say,
we have a plan
Right.
that's been approved by this planning board.
So,
You
So-
can impose conditions.
Right.
okay, then keep it in contiguous with the
Correct.
frontage. Okay, so that would be great.
And I would be completely in favor of that, because the planning process and the
There's reasons, this is well laid, there's
Right.
intention.
if somebody wanted it so bad, you know, they could choose to come back to this planning board and show how it worked.
right. Or-
And why it works and why
And
it
why they wanted it. Because, you know,
I'd like to weigh in anyway on this. I think it would be good to have a little bit of flexibility built into that. I'm with you 100%, we don't want houses built 75 feet back, but having a little bit of a,
oh, I agree, yeah, maybe 10 feet, 15 feet,
Right.
sure. Someone might want to have a deeper front porch, and there's lots of.
and it just provides some variety to
Sure.
the,
Right, so it's not long
And some people might want to do more expansive landscaping in front of their houses.
true.
Get away from the road, you know, screen their view. So there should be some flexibility like that. Some people don't care, others care deeply that they see green rather than road.
And also, I think it should be noted that, you know, this is your business. This is not actually a charity on your part, but should everyone come and want simply single-family homes and you can fetch the price you need to make it such, it could be. Just because a duplex is shown doesn't mean it has to end up
Correct.
being that way.
Correct.
It's just showing, as we've
It's
talked
showing
about,
the maximum that you would be allowed
possibility.
to build on that lot. So it might be that someone builds a single-family home now, and then in the future, they want to build more on that lot, and they might be allowed.
And not to put too fine a point on it, but there's certainly been, discussion in the public of why would anyone want to live? And the answer is, well, and you don't have to. You could buy and spend the money for the privilege of living entirely on your own property.
Right, living on a bigger lot.
You can do that, yeah.
So I think then, we're just trying to put a final
Yes.
point on it. Conceptually, where we are is we would submit these as architectural renderings, we'd submit the color palette. At one point, Ben also asked for elevations. We sort of view these as the renderings / elevations, or do you want to see architectural elevations for each of those designs as well? They tend to be the black and white, straightforward with measurements.
I
What
think
we
he
do
wants to,
What we've been doing is a colored, flat-on piece of the building. Not the whole building, but one piece, and then pulled out the height, maximum height,
that.
the trim material, the siding material, whatever other important materials, an image of the window, an image of the door, an image of the siding colors, because it'll be several different choices, and then the roofing. So if it's asphalt shingles, the color of the shingles. For the nursery school, it'll be the metal roofing. So I would expect to do one of those for
each.
maybe not for each one, but for at least one,
So it can be cited that that's what,
the tallest one typical.
And then again, that falls on Tom. I mean, there are
That's
requirements
right.
that the height of buildings must be,
It's
can't be
under
any higher
35 feet, it's
Yeah.
hard to, I mean, the highest building that we have shown here is the nursery school, which is just approaching 30 feet at its peak, is my
Right.
recollection.
Okay. Yes, so then yes,
Yeah.
unless anyone on this board right now wants to weigh in on the notion of these being placeholders, we can make some notion of conditions for contiguous setbacks, moving forward such that future development is informed by that. Yes? Any other design questions?
Well, one thing, we haven't looked at footprints, and I'm not sure that the footprints that we're seeing are the same as the footprints that are shown on the drawing here, so that this will change.
So that's, I think, Claudia's last question. Are those placeholders sufficient
Yeah.
for now? Because if I mix and match, if I go with the one house that's a little bigger, with a attached garage, those footprints automatically vary. We could guess and just say this one, this one, this one, this one, but those would just be guesses.
So I think that, John, that's where we came to, well, the notion really about the setback and where you're gonna start, whether you go double or single or back.
Yeah, I guess what I'm searching for is how does one configure that setback on a drawing? Do you try to draw what the footprint would look like, or do you just put a blob there and say that's a site?
Right, and for now, we've drawn the front setback line at the ZBA variance of 25 feet.
Yeah.
And put the houses right on them. I think the porch looks right on them, actually. And the question is, does that work, or, do you want to play with it a little bit?
I mean, I think what would happen, John, is you would come to me and say, I want to build a house on I like lot 13, and I want to build a house there. And we would look at the site plan. At that point, we would have a lot on, and we would say, okay, well, here's, you have 15% lot coverage. The house has been cited, there's a placeholder house that's cited at 25 feet. Okay, now, what do you want?
Yeah, no, I understand that. I guess what I'm trying to figure out how, at some point, this will be an official document and it will have a rendering of some sort on it. And what will that rendering represent? Will it represent a configuration of a building, or will it simply be a marker that says lot 2?
Right. So I think our concept is it would be a marker, and in your approval resolution would be a condition that explained to the zoning officer, the code enforcement officer, how to evaluate a plan for an individual lot when it comes in. We've got renderings of what those buildings look like. We've got a color palette. We've got materials. So what's done, whatever's proposed, needs to be consistent with that and with the front setback line, and any substantial variations come back to the board for review. Something along those lines.
So the site plan will look just like that. It's
Right.
not really going to change. You'll get a new one, but it'll look just like that one. And then lot 13 will have an appendix that has one of these houses with the color cut.
I see.
So,
Unless you want something different, but it would
That's right.
represent another dark road. I mean, these will come with, when Tom gets the packet, it will show where the driveway is. It will show, he will get the site, the proposed site plan as they're developed.
Right. I guess what I'm getting at is that this drawing, the one that shows roof lines, so suggests some are fixed. The affordable ones are,
Correct.
they're pretty solid. But then the other ones, like lot 5 and 6, those are the lots. And I don't know whether there's a way that you designate it in such a way that somebody looking at this diagram can say, oh, those are the ones that can change it.
Maybe they should be dashed lines
Or,
eventually.
there's a couple of different ways to come at it. One would be to kind of show us a mark, if you will, in the center of the lot at the 25-foot setback. And that's sort of the building, center building of the, whatever building gets designed, that's sort of the center. The driveway itself will be off of that. But so you're not misleading people with something that looks like it's specifically designed. It's more of a fixture, but the plans would reference these renderings and additional items. So there actually wouldn't be a fake building on there or a placeholder. It would be more of a mark as to where the building will be placed within these parameters. You could also just do a box, a flat box.
Just a box, right?
If that, because that would then not have you look at it and think, oh, wait, there's nothing there. That might be the way to go. It's a box kind of centered at the 25-foot setback with the indication on the map, on the plan, that refer to the renderings for more details on the
And
design.
the box represents the relative size.
Yes. Yes. And that wouldn't be hard to do. And again, the stormwater has been designed for 25%.
15%.
15% lot coverage of total impervious surface. So it's another criteria that would be established to put some arms around it without actually having someone come in and say, this is the house I'm designing, I would like to buy it from Columbia.
So however it is that it's noted, to me, it's not really relevant to me whether I can see this dormer or not on a box, as long as it's noted 15% lot coverage, intention of 25%, or 25 feet setback, potentially a condition not to exceed, should the planning board decide something like that is a necessary guideline. Then there's that, and then you fall back on code. So however, we're supposed to read this, and this is also largely right, a public speaking piece. It could look like this. It could look different based on the size of your lot and what you want. So I don't care. Again, as long as it's noted that it's not exactly has to be looking like that.
What's our code about if somebody wants to build an addition?
It depends on where they want to put the addition and how much of their
And how
lot is
big it
already
is.
covered. Right, and the size
Who will-
of that.
Who will pass that judgment, what it looks like and how it works with the main building and so forth?
Well, actually, there's aesthetics in our code as well. So the codes officer, be it Tom or whoever takes this place at any point, has to fall back on what it says in the code to say,
Shape, size.
yes, it
colors.
must not be asimilar from everything happening. Roof lines must be
Okay, so
in
you're not
keeping, building materials must be similar, not only with the existing building, but with the neighborhood. All of that is still in the code.
You know, as you're doing your code update, I can say I've been doing this for a long time. I'll be with the board for a year or two and we work through and you pick colors. There's no mechanism for a year from now, 10 years from now, which you need someone doing something different, like the homeowner. And it's like the big hole in the planning system.
Yeah.
Like you approve something and it goes away. And
Well, also taste changes.
taste,
So,
right.
and that's not
And there should
necessarily a
be
bad thing,
some-
but
Right.
it needs to feel,
Right. But as you, so some municipalities have explored a more rigid enforcement mechanism. Not necessarily you can't change anything, but if you do want to change something, you gotta come in for a permit.
yeah.
And then the code enforcement officer can say, well, this is big enough, it's gotta go back to, it's really a site plan amendment, but, something.
One of the things that, I don't know if I should be concerned about it or not, but I'm just puzzling over it right now. You have all this nicely thought out, consistent design and placement, and there'd be no quicker way to sort of really mess that up than have sort of indiscriminate fences start to appear in the place, And I've seen subdivisions where that's happened. You just had a
People put
ragtag
up full.
bunch of.
Plastic, white, intrusive,
Right.
all
And
that, yes.
I don't know if that's something that, I know it's not covered in our ordinance.
This is why one of the topics of new business will be, when is the planning board going to talk to the comp plan people?
Yeah.
Because that's an interesting,
Right.
I don't know.
It would mess it up.
Oh, big time.
Really quick.
So I think that that's why we've looked at, and I know that Hannah has with what's your storage space and where is that and what is usable on your front porch? Like, what does it look like to live next to your neighbor? How much of their space do you see? How well oriented would these buildings be so that you don't feel like you need a full-on privacy fence made of concrete to keep you from your, right? So,
Right. And,
but yeah.
so one of the discussions or topics from Guy's email was, hey, let's see a draft of your covenants and restrictions.
Okay.
And that's typical for like a homeowners association, right? Thou shalt cut the grass.
Right, right.
Thou shalt not put up fencing we don't approve. This isn't going to be an HOA.
Okay.
At the end of the day, I mean, these guys are affordable housing.
So then it's 10 inches of grass, just like the rest of
There is
us.
going to be a certain amount of flexibility there. So again, I come back to conditions. If you're concerned about something, let's get it into a condition so that if somebody does something that violates a condition, there's a mechanism to fix that. As opposed to, oh, they put up a fence, but we never said anything about it, so there's not much we can do. As long as it's set out as a condition, it's a violation of the site plan and there is a remedy.
Well, you know, another thing that should be probably added, somebody might want to sit on their porch in the front and play chess and need a light that is so bright that it would offend the neighbors on both sides. Maybe a little bit of control over illumination.
I think we have something like that.
I think you have night sky.
We have in
We
our
have,
code.
we're thinking about night sky.
Will that work? I mean, will
Yeah.
that successfully
Night
stop
sky
those?
compliant
Yeah, super.
fixtures will be, I mean, on all of the, I didn't mention
So
this,
that's
but I
like-
should have, and I'm glad you brought it up. On all of the porches, and on the nursery school, and on the affordable for sales, all of the lighting is in the ceilings of the porches.
Okay, good.
With the exception of the rear doorways, where I will specify a night sky compliant fixture for that, as we have on all the other buildings, so.
But I think other than that, like, you know, if I'm living right next to you and I'm staying up late playing gin all night, with my
And
lights
playing
shining
rock and
bright,
roll to.
Electric guitar.
playing rowdy folk music,
Mhm.
drinking, I mean, playing gin,
Mhm.
then you're, the same thing would be if you're just, you know, your service is there. Is this within our lighting ordinance within the village?
Yeah.
But that's a good thing to look at. And our fences for the comp,
So
for the
Yeah.
comp plan.
Right, I mean, it's difficult because
You don't want to be
these
restricted.
are affordable, not affordable, these are market rate houses. People are gonna build, they're gonna need theirs.
Yeah.
You know,
you also, you can really design to the nth degree. And everything looks like we live in Trumansburg, right? And it's just.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that we could do is there are some, like the town of Ithaca has language, which, by the way, they do not enforce, about the amount of variation in your front yard.
Oh.
But they don't enforce it because they find that it is unenforceable. But if you did, you know, you can, your addition can be in the front yard, but it can't be dissimilar to the houses
Yeah.
adjacent to you. So there is some language about
That.
not changing your setback to a giant degree, right? If you want to have that as a condition. You know, if it's more than, I don't know, 25 more feet, it would come back to it.
And again, I think to me that's something I would like for us as a board to consider, what that measure is acceptable from the 25 feet that's been granted as a variance, because we've all addressed that the neighborhoods that are very dissimilar from one another don't feel right either, and that's not the significance of living in town.
In the village, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah?
Yeah.
Vicky, yeah? Satisfied? Yeah, it just means satisfied and moving away from the agenda topic, everybody.
abstain.
Hannah, have you been afforded enough opportunity to ask any questions that you might have from reading past minutes or anything that? Okay.
One
Great.
final thing I want to share, just because this was an email today from Andy to Colin at MRB. Colin was asking, that the board was asking more detail about what the wetlands might look like. And Andy sent back a picture of a Sailor Grove stormwater wetland in a public park in Philadelphia. And
And this is a similar system?
Did you get to see the
So this is
Holding
a,
tanks?
this is a stormwater practice.
Yes. This is, so when we talk about those created wetlands, this is the concept. So actually, I'm working on a different project in Western New York, Buffalo, and I said, and wetlands, and I said, we should do what we're doing here, we should make wetlands around it. The engineers had no idea what I was talking about.
Really?
And they were like, oh, it can't be done. I was like, no, I'm working on projects where it's being done. It's a newer practice.
Okay.
And the world is not quite catching up, the engineering world, so we're gonna push them, because it's really.
What was that?
Well, it's prime land for that, Buffalo.
I missed that.
So, I've got a project I'm working on that has kind of a similar issue with some wetlands and stormwater. We need some serious stormwater, and I suggested, because their engineers were like, let's just fill the wetlands and we're gonna make it a stormwater pond. And I said, no. We can keep the wetlands and enhance and create this ecosystem. And they had no idea.
This is in Buffalo. I mean, you're in an interesting reclamation zone with a lot of cool stuff happening.
It really is.
Yeah.
So kudos, and we're exporting it.
That's the question that this prompted in me is, this is lovely. And how is it, I'm assuming that is intentionally designed that way.
It is.
And the plantings were deliberately put in there in that form.
Yes.
It isn't, okay, we'll just make a basin and whatever grows.
Exactly. And that is exactly what's proposed here.
Right, detailed plantings.
Um,
So Vicki, we all have everyone, we have this email, so you can blow it up and look bigger.
However, that doesn't answer the question about is there an example?
Closer, right, you can see.
The holding tanks and how they function, you know?
Oh, the down under? You want to see this?
So they're not, so typically,
This,
I'm going to say Andy for a minute, and I apologize when he watches this, if I got anything wrong, he'll correct it next week. But generally, when we do retention under things, roads, etc., it's pipe. You lay pipe. There's not holding tanks, because that's really expensive and inefficient. You have to excavate, dig, bury, and you really just lay pipes under the road, and that gives you holding capacity. That's typically how that's done. But this is at the temporary holding. This is the low point at the bottom
but
of the
if
south
it
end.
were to overflow, there would be a way it could.
So I believe it holds an unbelievable amount of water.
I think the intention was all the practices, and again, we can ask this closer,
If that-
because that wasn't on the agenda to be super deep in that, is by the time it gets there, it's already gone through all the safe hold mechanisms, because it's not allowed to drain off more than it already does.
And Andy's going to correct me next week, but if that overflows, we have bigger problems.
Yeah.
Because we're all underwater.
You know, the fact is that if you go over to the high school, the recent construction over there included a detention pond
Yeah,
that is, I mean, it's not as nice as this, but it's,
it's a bunch of
you
rocks.
can get an idea of what.
Right, of what it would do, and I've not seen it fully yet.
Right, but I will ask Andy to be prepared to kind of explain in more detail, Victoria, when he comes in next week.
Okay, thank you.
I think you do, because
It's in green now.
Yeah,
she likes to have that printed copy.
I'll print it for you before we leave.
Okay, you know, I'm so
I'm
cluttered.
gonna do that now. Does anybody else want?
No, I'm fine with the digital.
So I think we have a really clear picture of what we need to submit next week on the engineering side, they're talking daily, and I think now we have a clear understanding on the architectural side and the design side. So our goal will be to submit that on or about July 10th. Give you at least 2 weeks before the next meeting to review, confer, do what you do. I think the question we have, the big question is, are we just about there? What do we anticipate the process from here
Oh, who wants to speak for all of us?
on?
So the process would be digestion. So the process is, assuming that you just stated that you would have final preliminary plat presented on July 10th, and 2 weeks in advance of our final meeting, so that would be the discussion, then we can do what we can do now, having your feedback to say, well, this is what we think that final version is going to look like. Do our working on that, and then what any of us discover between now and then is the 8-ball question.
Okay. But you would anticipate, so,
I would anticipate putting it on the agenda.
right?
Unless MRB or Guy come up with something that we haven't seen, or they see that final thing and go, whoa, what?
Right,
Mhm.
there's no issue.
Or that resolution hasn't been found for South Street runoff.
Right, now that's obviously part of the engineering side, so there has to be
Right.
agreement amongst the engineers that that issue is resolved. We agree absolutely on that. But again, conceptually, it comes back in July. Do you anticipate another round of feedback and then revisions, or do you think, because what MRB typically does in Farmington, or other main town they do an awful lot of work in, is they will issue a letter just before the planning board meeting with their final list of issues. And the board approves it, subject to MRB's issues being resolved.
Mm-hmm.
And that
I think we
works.
established so the next working meeting would be addressing the plan in front of us, coming up with the conditions that might need to be in place, hoping that there might be resolution on that, about the conditions.
That would be on July 10th?
Yeah,
Well, it would be July,
the July
2 weeks later.
Okay.
24th.
All right, so we're anticipating a July discussion.
We're anticipating that there'll be a submission for final review.
Right.
That might then come back with conditions, and then all those other things kick in. There'll need to be public hearing, and that has to happen within 45 days of conditional preliminary approval, if there's conditions, and all of that happens. And
Okay.
you get there, but unless someone on this board, speak now and be honest, feels like, nope, I'm holding on to a giant red flag, because that's what the applicant is asking us. Does anyone in their minds right now have a giant thing that needs to be addressed such that it could stop?
I would like to see the relationship of the large central building as it works with the nursery school. Size, shape, materials, to be able to we have them here, we've seen individual things, but how they relate in a vista. In other words, you drive in and the nursery school is here, and the large building is there. We got that little chip walkway to just see how those two, the biggest of the buildings there, talk to each other. Because it will certainly have some overlap.
We need some of those virtual reality.
I know, so what version of presentation would satisfy that for you?
A scale thing that shows the large apartment, the complex, the big one in the center.
Basically talk about a view
Yes,
down there.
a relationship of seeing this and this kind of visually. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, it doesn't, just a kind of a perspective shot into
Perspective, that's.
the place, into the setting.
Every perspective is fancy.
So, if I'm understanding, we come in July, we present a perspective. All the revisions, everything you had July 10th. You're not going to have a perspective by July 10th, because we just found out about it now.
How long does it take to achieve perspective, just for good reference?
A render to take a
It
couple
could
of
take
weeks.
a month, I mean,
It's pretty expensive.
It's expensive to do,
many
okay?
thousands of dollars.
And thousands of dollars, okay.
They are.
A photograph and a photograph with the proper overlap. It's, upright.
So,
Is that so-
what we
just
can't
so-
have is every meeting have,
Oh, yeah,
another thing to provide. So what we're trying to do is ask, if we present everything in July, can you then in August, and I don't understand the public hearing part, but
because it's so the last time we
So
had
will
a
that
public
public
hearing
hearing
was
happen
a
in
very different drawing that they saw.
yes, in August, would we have a public hearing and then a resolution for you to consider? Is that the timing that you were thinking?
So the timing that I'm thinking, yes.
Okay.
Also,
But
we
there
can
could be
determine, there could be, or it could be August would be, it couldn't happen before August because July is the 24th. And if you need to have within 45 days, but I can't imagine saying next week we're gonna have the public hearing, that would be appropriate.
Right.
So 2 weeks after that, you're already, and then within that puts you pretty much at the August meeting at the earliest possible.
And we also have posting requirements for public hearings that we have.
We,
It has, and we have to have one within 45 days. I mean, so the maximums, right, Joe, or what we live by. Things can sometimes happen under.
we have to keep an open mind regarding the public hearing, because they might bring something up we haven't thought of.
That, which is what Adam also just pointed out, I mean, things can arise, but the question for us now is, do we, I mean, this is our application in front of us at this time, make things. I am not in need of $1,000 worth of perspective to see the relationship, because it's here in the blueprint.
Yeah,
But that is, and
it's
it's up to
impossible
me
to
to figure.
visualize that, though.
But you could say that about all blueprints, on
Yeah,
every.
This rendering, this rendering, and.
Yeah, I can do it, I'll do
I
it.
mean, I don't mean to be
Overlay.
that sticky, I'm just like,
You know, to
I think
some
so.
degree, my hesitation with this has been partially what the public has spoken up about, is just the impact and size.
yeah, yeah.
A little bit downscaled, I would have endorsed it probably heartily, but it's huge.
It's a big deal.
It's a huge project. And
Right.
So the question is, the way I'm trying to think of it right now is, I don't know if this will be helpful to you guys or not, but is not what I'm going to decide, or not what I think about, you know, some of the design things or anything. It's, do I have in front of me adequate information to make a decision?
Right.
Yes.
And I think I do. You know, I don't think there's anything big that we haven't gotten information on that now we'll go through each of our own little processes of figuring out how it all fits together and where we come down. But do we need more information? I personally don't think I do.
That is so we understand, we're gonna have some, and you're gonna vote, you're gonna vote, that's obviously, that's why you're here. The question is there something that's missing that we can supply? And in the context of, I think Joe's just expressing that we've said yes to just about everything we can think of, and the budget is completely blown. I mean, so the dollars are really, they've not enough. And so if we have to do something else, of course it'll be done, but we just want to make sure. So, but that,
No, that I think for me, the same as Rick, satisfying MRB's outstanding questions, getting final drawings.
I'm comfortable with what we've.
To be able to make a. Yeah, I don't know. Okay.
okay,
Okay, that sounds good, thank you for clarifying.
all right.
You're welcome. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Moving on. Number 5, old business. Do we have specific old business? Vicki has a couple things that she wants to talk about. I don't think we have any actual things that are outstanding. Am I forgetting anything?
It would be helpful. I think there are some things we could follow up with when Tom can start joining us again.
Yeah, for old business.
For old business.
Do you want to identify them now so I'm clear to put them on the
Well,
agenda?
we specifically were talking about going back and doing previous approvals to see whether what we approved is
Happening.
what is actually happening.
I think he's moved forward on that.
But he hasn't been to a meeting since we discussed it. So, yeah. I think the planning board.
Wait, are you talking about many different outstanding things, or are we talking about Elm Street?
No, I think that we were going to sort of do an inventory of.
Oh, a general
of
inventory.
the things that the planning board has approved in the last few years. It's not a lot. but
Inventory of site plan
stuff.
review
And just make sure that
Site
what
plan
we
review.
approved
is happening.
what actually
Okay.
happened.
what we're going to be seeing.
You want to pick a start date, you want to make that in the past 5 years, you want to make it,
Yeah.
okay.
I'll bet you that it's, it's not more than a handful.
Okay, yeah, no, that's great.
Right.
Okay. Cool. Let's get that a thing on there so that he can prepare that, and think about that. That might take him a little time, because as we all know, he was out
Oh, I know, exactly.
for his,
I'm not, no pressure, just.
yeah, I like to write the deadline and goal down. And so,
He's
also
I
really
totally get that, yes.
so he might, but if we say this is what we're anticipating, we don't don't expect you to be ready for it next meeting, but we would like to see this maybe in August or get started on it, show us, yeah, so then that's great, thank you. Okay, unless there's any other specific old business, there's some interesting things that Vicki would like to talk about for new business, and some of them we may have mentioned already, but again, it's that notion of let's get these other things as topics so that they can be thought about and properly.
I can possibly only relate to the 3
Okay.
pages full.
She writes big, don't worry.
I think I was alarmed by the letter we received from the village trustees because I felt that had to be done completely in accordance with.
Could you cite the
The
date
public.
of the letter that you're speaking of?
I'm talking about Dear Neighbor. It was not signed and not dated.
It's not.
It's not, but it says in the at the beginning of June.
Yeah.
Okay, and that came in our post
That
in the past
arrived
2
at our
weeks.
houses. And it made a lot of assumptions that absolutely need to be part of a comprehensive plan. It can't go independently like this. Just because a board votes to go in this direction, it's just not how you get there. So that really bothered me, and the thing that bothered me here too, that is the quality of life. Now, I've known this village and worked here since 1973, maybe before some of you were born, possibly. And I've always loved this village, but we're losing it. We're losing it very, very quickly. We have jailbreaking at night on Route 96. We've never done anything about it with the police. We have the sort of just quality of life village services. The new asphalt connections, Cemetery Road and our street has a 4-inch lump from one to the other. You can't bring a baby carriage over it. You can't ride a bike over it. And my truck hates it and wants to back up the other way. I have a long list like this. I don't know what we want to do about it. I don't think we have time tonight to get into it.
I think that what you've started off with, and I want everyone to, do we know the letter that Vicki's referring to that came from the trustees essentially that was like, here comes your tax bill, here's what's happening in your village, things are changing, this village has been about people coming together, living, growing, changing, blah. So there's more that one could read into it or not. When I read it, I was saying, okay, and things are shifting, things are changing.
Yeah,
And what I think it leads into is making sure we're part of the comprehensive plan revisioning process. And I think soon,
that should go
we
hand
should
in
be-
hand. This should not be
I think
seated.
they're presuming we're thinking that, but I don't want to presume what the village board could
Yeah,
obviously
because
think.
this
It's Hannah's
is-
job.
No, I'm just kidding. Maybe I got it.
But I think it's a good point that we should tap in and maybe I guess it's me to say, hey, committee reviewing, when are you ready to hear some of the board's concerns? We addressed that loosely last meeting, but I think that why don't I check in with them? And then it's an opportunity for us to say, because of course, the village must be surveyed about what it thinks it wants its village to be, because that is the comp plan process.
Yeah,
So
but
be clear that that's
the village
happening.
board are representatives of the village population.
Right.
Yeah, but that letter, I think, needed to be based on a deeper reality than just these assumptions here. With climate change, this is a dangerous letter to
Well,
read.
how do we, actually, how do we want to engage with the comp plan review? Are we ready to, how do we want to do that?
Well, shouldn't we have a new one that everybody submits something to, like the last one, which is not?
Oh, no, but they're planning all that, that's what they're doing. That is what they're doing,
But I
that's
mean,
what they're working
Is
with
there
them.
going to be a questionnaire sent out that makes up the comprehensive plan?
The village cannot.
No, not the village, the committee. The committee is working, no,
They have to be
the
the-
contractor is.
Right.
Correct. So the committee is working with the contractor, who's the EDR to properly execute a comprehensive plan review, which includes surveying the public, having all these different meetings.
So I was
One
just going to
aspect-
say, this should have been gone hand in hand with something like that.
I think it is, it's just happened
I just
before
don't-
their survey.
Yeah,
And that's what I'm saying, I think. Anyway,
Yeah,
but the big question for us as a board, how would we like to be involved in that review process? Are we ready? Do we want to wait until they have their first public engagement meeting to say we'd like to come and talk to you? Are we ready to be
well,
involved?
one thing this letter states, the quality of life and village services. So I have a list here of deeply disappointing village services.
No, but that's a separate issue.
Well,
Can you tell me when you want to be involved with the
uh,
comp plan committee? Or do you
it,
not know yet? Because we can get to that in a second. I know,
the
I know.
most important one is the pollution of our ponds by the high school. I had to write an 8-page report to them. I had to go to their meetings. This is something that, as a planning board member, I think I could mention. They're totally polluted with black toxic algae. And I had to spend time and money. I had to cut some trees on my side, which were putting too many branches and stuff in it. The next pond is polluted, and it all goes into Cayuga Lake. So we're participating in the mess that our own beautiful Finger Lakes is starting to turn into. And it's just an important topic to discuss sometimes.
But you have 4 pages of topics there.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into those. I'm going to
How do
type.
we attack that?
I'm going to
I
type
think
some
we
of
pick your top
this.
5, and I think what I'm just going to answer my own first question, which was, I think I'm just going to reach out to officially, if it's all right with all of you, as the planning board and say, hi, we're ready, what stage are you at, could you give us a reply, and then I can send the reply to the team about what stage the zoning comp plan review committee is at. And Vicki, do you want to pick your top 5 from your list, because you had spoken to me on the phone about signposts, and there's some specific important village things. What is the village's plan for water mitigation? You have some really important things on there.
Well, for instance, it shows that.
One second, before we move to that, because you said, what should we tell the comp plan people?
Yeah.
One of the things about when we participate is it's kind of hard to know exactly when it would be most valuable for them to hear from us.
Right.
Now, they have a consultant who does this all the time, right? So my guess is if we were to ask them to ask the consultant, when is the best time to get input from something like the planning board, I'll bet they can say, it's when we get to
X point.
you know,
So let me generate a document
Yeah.
saying, hi, we're interested.
right.
Let us know when you think the best time is.
Yeah, or, consult
What-
with your consultant.
Yeah, okay.
I would like to suggest that we do as much as we can in writing. That, I don't know what your list there is, but it looks pretty long, and if you could share it with us in a
I'll type it.
in a typewritten form,
Yes,
that would be.
I can do that.
And the thing that I'm really anxious to feed in to the, well, it doesn't, actually this doesn't come into the comprehensive plan so much, but the whole idea of how one uses and accesses the zoning bylaw and the comprehensive plan. How can that be applied to decision making?
How can be more easily applied to decision making?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
It's difficult.
Yeah, right now, I mean, there's no index, there's no glossary. Well, there is a glossary of sorts, but it's really, and there are multiple documents that have overlap.
So I'll send out the missive saying we're here and we see that you're there, committee. Let us know when it's a good idea. In the meantime, let's compile a list of things we know need to be addressed, and we can talk about them whenever we want, and we're ready with them when we go. And then let's have Vicki compile her list in a digital format that we can all.
Novel format.
No, in bullet
Romantic
points.
novel.
No, honey, bullet points. That's it. Because
Do a Twitter form.
no, before they changed it to no character limit. Because you had spoken, and wisely so, we've sort of talked about it. What is our village and town water mitigation plan in the current climate? That is something our planning board should know. You had some
And look what
specific
we've
questions
done
in
to our
that.
buildings. And look at the buildings, the lack of
house
maintenance,
is
right
not.
on Main Street with rotting wood falling into the sidewalk.
These are so they're
Bad stuff.
important. I don't want to brush it aside, and I don't actually think
And
there are
there's
too
no
many in
funeral
town.
parlor downtown. Did you notice?
Oh,
The former Rongo, one of the most popular
finally,
bars.
that thing put to.
It just gave me, I can't even walk by it.
Maybe
The
it's just the
beautiful
beginning.
cast
Maybe they're
iron
about to add
columns.
some.
Cast right here in this village and they paint everything morose off by
Maybe it's just.
Huh?
Maybe it's just the beginning.
Oh, yeah, okay, and
Maybe gold filigree? No. So that's the,
Actually, it makes me thirsty.
is there a
that's the
line?
idea, get you in there.
Well, so I feel like I don't want you to feel silenced, I do think that it might be good if you could type those up.
I will.
And can you send them to us in advance, and we might be heavily
Yeah,
occupied
of course, I
next
will
meeting,
share
but
them.
soon we won't be. We might be heavily occupied next meeting
Yes,
with
so
other
get it to you
topics.
earlier.
But let's get it now,
Look
and
at it.
because I am actually, I don't even know what is the water mitigation plan for our village? Who has that? Is it DPW?
We are in the middle of a stormwater study as we speak.
Okay.
So
So the village board is undertaking that?
Yeah,
Okay.
and MRP is our engineer for that. So
Okay,
there
so if
should
we
be-
watch those agendas, then we'll know when that's coming up, if we want
They
to
talk
talk more
about it almost
about it.
every village board meeting. It's,
Okay.
Matt McKenna comes down from MRB, and they've just run cameras in some of our stormwater just a few weeks ago.
Cool.
So during drive-ins and wet, of course, we haven't had a whole lot of drive-ins, so I think we're still waiting on some information on that. But they are working on it, so it's in process, and it's actually been going on for probably close to a year now.
Okay, and I should know, can you please remind me when the next village board meeting is? July 8th.
6:30 p.m.
Wow.
Until 1 a.m.
until 1:15 a.m. Home fries, coffee, lots of coffee.
Okay. I have some commitment. All right. What's the other thing? That was a big one that you mentioned in conversation.
The collecting pond in back of Burn Dairy is supposed to hold water and water-loving plants. The rubber membrane in there has been ripped to shreds and it's bone dry. Where that disperses, we don't know. The high school,
Is that,
it's
yeah.
not going into the collecting pond. The high school, and the high school ponds were this thick with sediment, so nothing was filtering.
That village property? Or is that?
No, but it ends up with us. See, it ends up in my pond and my neighbor's pond. And the Trims are very, very
So I think that's a town
concerned
question.
about it because we haven't, last year we didn't even see water. It was all covered with green algae and black algae. This year it's better because of the heavy rains. But I have to go to extra meetings, with the school board and the grounds people there, and it's very time consuming. And it's, there are tires in their pond.
Well, and what has the village response been to you about that?
They hired somebody I recommended, which I thought was wonderful. The new principal, Kimberly, she hired the water management team, mostly volunteers, work by the airport, social, what do they call it? And they have a woman called Adriana Herkler, and she's an expert on water.
So it sounds like they're in resolution. What is it that you want this board to do about it?
No, it's just one of the problems as a taxpayer living here that I have to go through. To get to, where everything takes photographs, time, writing, going to meetings, and it shouldn't be that way. It should be easier. I should be able to make a phone call or two. And it gets too convoluted.
That's too many bugs in the garden. There's too many of us, Vicki. Okay. All right, so we'll get that good list from you. Okay.
So I'll get that to you.
Any more new business? Okay. Did I hear?
I move that we adjourn.
Did I hear?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, thank you. Adjourn.
Thank you.